Hi, this is Shelby with Cricket in Salem, Oregon, and you and your dog are listening to Bad Dog Agility, where the naughty dogs train.
I'm Esteban.
And I'm Sarah, and this is episode 14.
Today's podcast is brought to you by CourseWalker, a fun and easy dog agility software program for course layout with video game-like 3D views. You can build your course in 2D or 3D mode and then simulate running the course from the handler's or dog's perspective. Watch the demo or download a trial at CourseWalker.com.
There will also be links to our sponsors on the podcast page.
Today's podcast topic is what makes a good coach/instructor? And this is actually part of Dog Agility Blogger Action Day. Steve Schwartz, also known as the Agility Nerd, and you can find him at agilitynerd.com, came up with the idea to have these Dog Agility Blogger Action Days. Basically, anyone out there on the internet with a blog related to dog agility in any way puts in their 2 cents about a topic, and everyone blogs about the same thing every few months. The last Blogger Action Day we had a few months ago, the topic was attitude. And we wrote a blog post called Attitude, You, Your Dog, and Chuck E. Cheese. And it actually turned out to be a very popular post for our readers. This time, we decided to go ahead with a podcast instead of a written article. So let's get started. First, before we begin, I think for the purpose of this podcast, we're going to assume instructor and coach are interchangeable and mean pretty much the same thing. So let me ask you, Sarah, what do you think makes a good instructor or coach?
Well, I think the first thing that's going to come to anybody's mind when they're thinking about choosing an instructor is the knowledge that that instructor brings.
You know, as a general statement, I definitely agree with that. But specifically, there may be things that your instructor, especially your local instructor right there in your area, may not have in terms of knowledge. For example, if you're a competitor and you want to get out there and teach your dog a running dog walk, and your instructor has never taught someone to do a running dog walk, it doesn't mean that they are not a great instructor or coach or that you should quit the club and go somewhere else. It's just that for that specific piece of agility, you're going to need to go to someone else, someone who has that knowledge and experience. Aside from having knowledge about dog agility, I think they need to have a broader background in dog training in general. You know, they need to have a good idea of how dogs learn. I think you need to be very familiar with reinforcement theory. And I think you need to know how to problem solve. And I think all of those kinds of things and skills and experiences fall under the very broad category of knowledge. How knowledgeable is my instructor?
So we both agree that knowledge is very important, the knowledge of agility and the knowledge of dog training. But does that mean that our instructor then needs to be a top-notch handler and competitor?
Now that is a great question. I know that there are people out there, and they're only going to be interested in other high-level competitors. You know, if you haven't been to an AKC national final, if you're not a national champ, a world champ, a world team member, they may feel you don't have very much to offer them as an instructor or a coach. And I disagree with those people. I do not think that you need to be a top-notch handler, a famous handler, a world team member, to be a great coach or instructor. And I think this kind of goes back to all of sports. When I was young, I was on the swim team. I played several different sports. And the best coaches weren't necessarily themselves the greatest or fastest swimmers. And I think you find that in all sports at all levels of competitions, you know, right up into the NFL or professional soccer.
Well, I think what you're really looking for in an instructor is somebody with the knowledge that we talked about and then a critical eye, somebody that can see what's happening. Being able to watch somebody else run in agility and to see with a critical eye what's happening, where the problems are, what's causing the problem, that's really a skill that not everybody has. So there are a lot of really great instructors out there that have what I would call a great eye for agility, the ability to see what's happening and to pinpoint what needs to change. It's the same with sports when you're working on a baseball swing or something and they tell you to shift your weight. I mean, you just have to be able to see those things, and that's something that the instructor can bring.
I agree. There are a lot of people out there in many different sports that are very successful in their own sport, but they can't explain or teach someone else to do the same thing. They may not even be aware of what makes them great. They might not be aware of their footwork or their positioning or their training regimen, and they don't know how it affects them. It comes to them very naturally. It's almost a gift. They don't think about it consciously. And if they're not aware of it, they're going to have a hard time teaching someone else or explaining to someone else what's going on when it comes rather intuitively.
And a really great instructor or coach might be able to watch that top-level handler and tell you why they are so successful, what they're doing to get that great performance.
That's right. So, I would encourage anyone listening to the podcast, if you're out there, you're looking for a good instructor, don't fixate on high-level competitors as the only source of great instruction or coaching.
I do think that maybe kind of a blend of the two could be the best path. Like, I do think that there is a lot that you can learn from top-level instructors, especially like
you
the
mean
mental...
handlers or instructors?
Well, top-level handlers, especially like the mental game. If you have an instructor that, they may be a great instructor, but if they haven't competed at a very high level or in very high-pressure situations, they may not necessarily be the best instructor for your mental game. They may be great at helping you work through training problems, but maybe you need to talk to somebody else about the mental game. That's why it's so nice with all of the online classes opening up. You can really take a lot of things from a lot of people. You can have your running contact instructor. You can have your weekly class day in, day out instructor. You could even have, like an obedience or a relationship class or instructor. And you could have somebody that you're going to help with their mental game. So, I think sometimes looking at all of the people that you have access to and using each one for what they're really good at can be a great strategy.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I think what we're both saying is that to be a great coach or instructor, you do not need to be a high-level or top-notch competitor or handler.
I do think there are other qualities in an instructor that you have to be an effective instructor. I think one of those is how you interact with your student. It doesn't matter what your credentials are. If you don't have a good relationship with your students, if you don't have the ability to communicate with them, to explain what you're doing, to get your ideas across, you are not going to be a very effective instructor for those students.
Communication is definitely important. So we agree that a great coach or instructor is going to have some kind of baseline knowledge, right? They've got good knowledge. They don't necessarily need to be a top-notch handler, but like you just said, they definitely need to be able to communicate with you, the student. They can have a ton of knowledge. They can know everything that there is to know about agility. They can be a world champion, and if they are not able to share that information with you in a way that makes sense, in a way that you can go out and apply it to your own dog training, then the bottom line is they're not a good instructor or coach, at least not for you.
I agree. I think communication is the most important skill. And there's a couple of different components of communication. There's the attitude or the tone of the communication. So, a lot of, especially in sports, a lot of coaches are portrayed as being very domineering, pushing you to be the best. And I personally don't like that style of coaching. I don't like somebody criticizing me to try to make me better. It just doesn't work for me. And I think there are certain people that can handle that and maybe even thrive in that. A lot of high-level athletes, perhaps, that's what they're used to. But I think for the majority of agility competitors out there, they are not going to flourish under an instructor that is constantly criticizing them or, even yelling at them or that kind of typical sideline coach, get up and get out there and run sort of push. So I think for most people, and when you're an instructor, you have to think about a range of students. And I think for most of your students, a more constructive attitude is going to be better.
I think that's a good point. A coach or instructor can have all the knowledge. They might be telling you all the right things. But if they're saying it in a mean way and you're kind of not listening to them and you're really stressed out about it and anxious, you're not in an ideal position of learning. You're not really receptive to the feedback that they're giving you. And they're not getting the best out of you. I totally agree.
And the other aspect of communication, I think, can be more personal style, but I personally, both as a student and an instructor, I like to explain things, to not just know what to do, but to know why to do it. And the reason that I think that that's important as an instructor is because it lets people, once they've kind of soaked up the knowledge that you're giving them, it makes it easier to apply. So if you just tell somebody to do a front cross here when you're walking a course or something like that, if they don't know why to do a front course there, it's going to be hard for them on the next course to figure out where to put that front cross. So when I'm teaching students, I explain a lot. I do a lot of talking. I'm very chatty, which is one of the reasons why I like doing this podcast. But I think that it helps the students to learn and to be able to apply what they're learning. When we had Greg Darrett on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, he actually said that was sort of an American thing, the wanting to know why and the questioning. And it helped him as an instructor to have to articulate everything that he's doing. Kind of like you said, sometimes it's intuitive and you don't really know why. And it forced him to evaluate what he was doing more. But I think as a student, it's also very helpful.
And I think that brings up another interesting aspect of communication in that with a good instructor, it kind of turns into a two-way street. With a typical instructor, you might be getting a lot of information, a lot of instruction from them, and it's kind of one way. But with a really great instructor, you're going to ask those questions. You're going to want to know why. And in asking those questions, you're kind of letting them see what your understanding of a concept is. And now you've got this two-way communication going where information is going not just one way, but kind of back and forth. And I think this is great for the student, and you see this with great instructors.
So I think great instructors, they need to have a lot of knowledge, but even more importantly, they have to be able to communicate that knowledge. And then I think the third thing that an instructor needs is the ability to inspire. They need to be able to help you keep going when you run into problems. Dog training isn't easy. Agility training certainly isn't easy. Most people, when they start agility, they don't know what they're getting themselves into when they have their very first agility class.
Yeah, inspiration is a very important thing. I think everyone has had the experience of having a really great teacher at some point in their past. And that teacher was so inspiring to you, made learning that subject so wonderful that you thought you might do that. For me, I had a really great math teacher, and I thought, wow, maybe I should major in math. Maybe I could study in math. And when I got to college, I thought, I hate math, But that teacher was so amazing and so inspiring, made the subject so wonderful that I thought this might be something that I'd like to do.
And it's funny, I think this is where the personality of the instructor really comes in. And how that personality fits with your personality is going to be very important. But when you think about it, the knowledge is what they have in their head. Communication is a skill that they have. The inspiration kind of comes from within. It comes from the person. It comes with who they are and how they interact with you and how they feel about agility even, right? If they get excited when they're talking about it, if that excitement transfers to you so that you're excited about it. That's really what a great instructor can bring.
I agree 100%. So to sum up, great instructors have a lot of knowledge. They're able to communicate that knowledge to their students, and they're able to inspire their students. And if you've got an instructor who does this for you, don't ever leave them. And make some cookies and bring it to your next class.
That's a good idea. Steve started Dog Agility Blogger Action Day, but maybe we should start Bring Your Instructor Cookies Day.
Oh, nice. I'll take chocolate chip. Thank you.
And that's it for today's podcast.
We'll have a link to more information about the Blogger Action Day on this podcast page, so you can read everyone else's blog articles about the same topic.
We'd like to thank Advo Agility for sponsoring today's show. Advo Agility specializes in health and wellness, weight management, vibrant energy, and sports performance for the human half of your agility team. Visit Advo Agility at advoagility.com. And visit us at baddogagility.com for agility articles, videos, and podcasts. Sign up for our newsletter so you never miss an episode, and be sure to leave a comment on the website or on Facebook. Happy training!